So all three of us were in the class. We started here 2001 cohort, so finished up in 2005. I got my undergraduate in accounting. Brian Kaiser got his in computer engineering. He took a little bit longer than John and I. We say it's because he's less gifted than either the two of us. Anyone who knows him would know that's definitely not true. We've been riding his coattails for now 10 years, 15 if you count school. Both John and I went on to get our MBAs here through the Raikes school, so coached two design studio teams during that time. But I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, originally Millard North High School.
And you guys hear me okay? Great. So yeah, I'm John Wirtz. I'm from Kansas City originally and came up to school here in Nebraska, attracted by the Raikes program. So I was looking at kind of WashU and University of Missouri and probably a lot of the schools that a lot of you all were looking at as you were considering college. And literally, like my whole kind of journey, it's kind of crazy to think about how much of my life journey got influenced by this, but like a handout got passed around during one of my senior classes in high school, and it listed the J.D. Edwards Honors Program at the time, but the Raikes School Scholarship kind of caught my eye, and I sent an application in kind of on a whim. I'd never set foot in Nebraska before in my life, or really thought about Nebraska. Got in and came up for interview days up here and saw the Coffin Center and campus, and my parents and I kind of fell in love with just the concept of the Raikes School, and that's kind of set my journey on the path towards meeting David and Brian. I met my wife here at the Raikes School, Ella, who's also an entrepreneur who started and sold a business much faster than we have. She's faster moving in most things between the two of us. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I kind of set on this path from the Raikes School, attracting me into the University of Nebraska. And then at Hudl, I really run our product team, our product managers, our designers, and our product strategy. And I've been spending a lot of time on our media business. How do we take all these highlight videos our high school athletes are making, millions and millions of highlight videos, and help them get noticed by tens of millions of fans around the world?
Let me do a little survey first. If you currently work for Hudl, or you have in the past, or you're an intern or a director, or in any way directly associated with the company, why don't you raise your hand? Let's see what we've got. So it's a really friendly audience. And those of you who didn't have the chance to raise your hand, we hope that you will be raising your hand. I'm what best known around these parts as the husband of Lori McClure. Beyond that, I've been involved with Hudl from pretty much the day one. I grew up in Nebraska working on Sand Hills Ranches, decided there had to be a better place to work. And so I got my PhD in biochemistry and was on the faculty at the University of Nebraska Medical Center for a while, and then came down and worked with a very talented group of people growing Harris Laboratories for 32 years. And here I am today, so that's my background. For the last 10 or 11 years, I've spent a fair amount of time with Hudl and with John and David and Brian. Kind of as an advisor, I'm currently chairman of the board, and just with a lot of interest in such a fine company and such terrific people. So that's my background. I think that we'll start off by asking you guys just kind of tell us about Hudl today. What are we today? So you have a little context of what we're going to talk about in the future. We're going to talk about challenges in getting underway, both professionally and as a company. But before we do that, how about setting the stage for what is Hudl today?
Yeah, I can talk about Hudl today. It's always kind of crazy for me to walk through what Hudl is today. We never could envision where it would be. But at this point, we've got about 430 employees around the globe. Offices, our headquarters here in Lincoln, which we're very proud of, and then an office in Omaha, Boston, London, and Sydney are all of our offices that have a pretty big blend of product and business. And then we also have a handful of sales and support offices in, I believe now 12, maybe 14. This is David's side of the business more than me. 13, split the difference. 13 additional countries around the world where we have Hudl offices with sales and support reaching out to teams around the globe. We work with now not only like 95% of teams here in the US from high school on up that play football use Hudl. We're also really proud of that. It's a pretty amazing base of customers that we've grown over the last 10 years. But then at the elite level, we've been growing a lot as well. So 20 out of 20 English Premier League soccer teams, 29 out of 30 NBA teams are using Hudl. The majority of elite rugby around the world is using Hudl. Australian rules football, the entire league uses Hudl in Australia. So those are kind of a few of the flagship groups we talk about, but really it's a testament to our team. We've had just kind of an unbelievable amount of growth now outside of football into soccer, rugby, basketball around the globe. A big growth area for us is basketball, where we've kind of crossed over 50% of basketball teams here in the US that use Hudl for video analysis. And so hopefully over the course of this next, kind of coming into the next basketball season, we'll be moving that up to where our football numbers are at. And just kind of the quick rundown on Hudl, we're about empowering teams with video and communication around that video. So whenever a game happens, a practice, a training session, we want to help teams capture that, deliver it to the athletes and coaches that need to see it, and mine the maximum amount of value out of that video. So now we've broadened beyond just video tools, and we're thinking about things like team communication. So we just rolled out a new messaging system in Hudl that allows teams to have two-way messaging, one-on-one, and group messaging. So they're doing more and more of their communication in Hudl, whether it's about video or not. And really kind of making Hudl the place where a team lives. It's kind of the backbone of that team when they're not on the field together. They're in Hudl on their phones or their tablets or on the web, interacting, leveling each other up, getting better. So that's a little bit about what we do. Product is really important for us. Engineering and software development is really important. It's really at the heart of our company. We've got over 200 people that are on our product team that are focused on building great software, making it work really well with hardware. So yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about a couple of our new products, maybe assists, instant replay.
Yeah, sure. So John hit on one of the big challenges we've had too is when we first started, we were focused in American football. So the University of Nebraska football team was our first customer. The New York Jets were our second one. And our name is Hudl, which is most popularly associated with the game of football. We think there's other sport application too. But so one of the challenges brand-wise that we deal with now is really pushing that to be beyond just a company that's thought about for American football. You know, we are the market leader in basketball. We are the market leader in soccer or football outside the US. So that's one of the things that we're working on constantly. A couple new products we launched this past year. One of them is directly for the American football space in the high school area. It's called Hudl Sideline. So one of the unique things about high school football that makes it different than the NFL and college is at the higher end level, they're not allowed to actually use any in-game video. There's no computers in the press box or in the coach's box. There's no technology on the sidelines for college coaches. In the NFL, they have Surface tablets that are equipped for video, but are not allowed to stream video. So they're just looking at still images, which are just like the printouts, but they're able to tell us straight on top of them, which is still valuable. That was one of our first value features that we sold for Hudl. But in the high school space, absent the state of Texas and the state of Massachusetts, where they follow NCAA rules, everybody can use video in-game. So we launched that product last year in beta for just over 100 teams, and then launched it for real this year, very for real, as we're learning how to support it fully with hardware systems out there for right around 3,000 teams around the country. Then a second product that we've launched last year we did in beta, and this year is full launch, is a product called Hudl Assist. And so what that's all about is, for the American football coach, like breaking down video forever was just a part of that culture, just kind of ingrained. It was a weekly part of the process. If you look outside of American football, for basketball, where they're playing multiple games a week, for sports like volleyball, lacrosse, the same applies. That breakdown culture just wasn't there because there's not those set kind of weekly rhythms. But there is budget to go out there and pay somebody to break down that and start gathering those insights, where from basketball, you can gain so much just by looking at the statistics and looking at the shot charts and understanding exactly what happened in the game that way. So we launched that product for, again, right around 100 teams last year, where we outsource it. That worked to the Philippines, so we work with a company called TaskUs, who powers all that for us. And then built really great tools for teams to submit their video, get it broken down within 24 hours, and then use where we could really add the magic, so on the reporting layer side, on just helping them extract that data and make it really usable. And so we launched that again it's launching in mass for basketball this year, and we ended up going back and launching it for American football this year too, and have had a large number of teams sign up for that service too. So a couple fun products.
David, will you talk a little bit about our mission and our values and what role that plays today and what role it played from the beginning to kind of keep us pointed towards success?
You bet, and John can chime in on this one too, but we both got our MBAs, as I mentioned earlier, so we understood the value of having a good mission statement and good values right from the start. But we let a little bit too much of our MBA knowledge kind of creep into that first version of our mission and our values. I couldn't recite it. I don't know if you could, our first mission statement, but I think it was probably a few paragraphs long, and we will say we did not use the word synergies or synergize or anything like that, but I don't think we were too far off.
No. It was bad.
We also had our first set of values, which I think grew to a list that was as large. It started at 4, with a lot of MBA speak that was pretty involved in it too.
Yeah, one was dare to be bold. Just kind of makes me shiver a little bit. But we recognized the value of mission statement and values. We weren't good at them yet.
So all my emails I sent with just bold font everywhere because I thought that was the actual intent of it.
Very literal.
We grew to as many as I think like 9 or 10 values before trimming it down, and really getting to a really good spot right now, I think. And a lot of that, the reason that they're important to us, both the mission and value statement, is that they really do guide the decisions that we make as a company. So as we're thinking through a potential acquisition or a product line expansion, or just a tough decision we're making related to our customers. Like, for example, I mentioned the sideline product. We ship hardware out there. Well, sometimes coaches break hardware. And it's not the manufacturer's fault. It's not our fault. But do we want to take care of that coach and go above and beyond? And so these kind of values that we use guide our decision-making on that. And constantly, John and Brian and I and our leadership team across the company are assessing, the decisions we're making, are those really in line with these values that we have out there? Or is something off? And if something's off, is it because, number one, the decisions we're making are wrong, and we really need to get back to our roots, get back to the values that are important to us? Or two, have things changed? And are we okay with that? Do our values need to evolve with the company, which they naturally have? I think we're in a good, steady state right now. I don't know what your opinion of it is.
Yeah, so the mission statement is we help teams and athletes win, period. So that's what the whole company thinks about all day, every day, and all of our offices around the globe. How can we help teams and athletes win? And the word win, we think about, it's not just about on the field having your score higher than your opponent's score, check it off. But for a lot of coaches, winning is helping their athletes get recruited and play at the next level. For a lot of athletes, winning is just kind of getting noticed and getting to feel good about being a part of the team. But generally, helping teams and athletes win is what we think about all day, every day. Our vision statement that helps us kind of look forward to the future is capture and bring value to every moment in sports. So that's what we think about as kind of our 2025 vision. If any moment that's happening that's important in the world of sports, we want to be capturing that in Hudl, whether it's video, whether it's data, whether it's a message between a coach, a trainer, and an athlete. And then we want to be leveling up the value from that moment. So the fact that it's in Hudl should mean it's 2 times, 3 times, 4 times more valuable to you because we're storing it forever, or because we're helping you share it, or because we're layering a report on top of it. So our whole team is constantly thinking about, in 2025, what's it going to mean to capture and bring value to every moment in sports? How do wearables fit into that? How does smart clothing fit into that? How, computer vision, machine learning, deep learning techniques, how does all of that fit into capturing and bringing value to every moment in sports? And it also goes from the daughter that's out in the backyard playing soccer with her mom, kind of learning the beginnings of the game, and how can her mom pull a phone out quickly and record and capture those moments, all the way up to Arsenal playing in the English Premier League and doing really hardcore analysis. So that's the breadth that we're trying to attack at Hudl, and that's why we have a team of 430 people and a lot of firepower, because we think the opportunity is huge.
So there's a bit of a teaching moment here about us. I would say among our other characteristics, we are a mission-driven company. We're a mission-driven group of people, and if you think about that mission, filling it out to the far reaches of the corners seems like a big task. We are up to big tasks in this company, and we have a mission that is large, and we think we can fulfill it if we stay on the mark. And so that's a part of our cycle of planning, acting, following up, is to fulfill that mission. So we are driven by our mission, and we're constantly raising the issue of our values, about how we are acting. Are we acting in our values? So how many T-shirts do you guys each have?
We really dressed up today for this audience. John put on a collar and long sleeves. I would guess, and I appreciate, first of all the Hudl T-shirts that we're seeing in the crowd today.
Yeah, we love
Thank
that.
you.
It's so cool to see.
My guess would be right around 300 over the past 10 years. A few that have gone into retirement due to either overuse, or we did a slight change to our logo, and I have a very critical eye around that change. So I have retired my old logoed shirts to marketing's appreciation.
Yeah, I have way fewer. We switched to a new shirt somewhere along the way that seemed to be better oriented towards taller, thinner people, and it's caused me to reduce my repertoire of shirts slightly. But no, I probably have a good 20 shirts. We've talked about that at Hudl a lot. Like, why do we have Hudl shirts all over the company? It's kind of like a creepy cultish thing when you walk in sometimes. But I think where it really comes from is, we started with the Huskers and with the Jets. And if you go visit any of our teams, like everyone wears team gear around the athletics department, and that is their uniform. And so I actually think it's kind of a cool part of our culture. We just kind of adopted that. David worked over there. It all seemed natural to us. Like, of course, you're going to wear your gear to work. And then I forget that when we're doing like an interview with somebody, like a roundtable interview, and everyone's wearing Hudl shirts, and the person's sitting there thinking, what is going on? Like this weird cult company. But it comes from our sports roots, I think.
So let's talk about starting the company. Did you have an idea for a product? Did you just want to start a company? Was it a little bit of both? What were some of those big first barriers that got thrown up when you thought, wow, how do we climb over this one? Talk about that stage. It was probably going on up on the second floor. What happened there, and what caused you to make this move?
Yeah, so Hudl's origination happened actually when we were in grad school. So after we graduated from undergraduate, but I know John and Brian had done a handful of things together prior to that, to varying degrees of success, or consistent degrees of non-success, I guess I should say.
That'd be more the right. Brian was more successful than me. Again, coattail riding.
Brian's CompuHelp, is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, when Brian and I were here before grad school, we wrote some grading software. Is Blackboard still the tool that everyone uses here? Or we moved off? Okay. So it sounds like it's about the same. So
write that.
I think
that was not their software.
Yeah, no, I think it's like every student in college's first like entrepreneurial endeavors to make a better Blackboard. I don't know, just that or like an app to find bars seems to be like common. So we fell into that kind of cliche trap. But so we built it. We pitched it to some professors around campus. We were gonna, I forget what it was called. It was like web grade or something. But ever from the beginning, like Brian and I, and then conversations with David and Matt Mueller, one of our early employees, lived across the hall here in Kaufman. We're talking about what we wanted to start kind of all the time. So we definitely had that vibe of like, we want to do something on our own. It sounds really exciting and fun. We're waiting for the right idea to come around. Being here at Kaufman for those 4 years was a huge part of having that like kind of confidence in the right people around you to feel like you could go build Hudl, and it didn't seem that hard at the time. We underestimated it.
So then when I was an undergrad, I worked at the University of Nebraska athletic department. So I was at first in media relations, and I was working for the rifle team and the baseball team. And that was an interesting experience. I had never witnessed a women's rifle meet before, but I wasn't the best sports information director for that sport. And that same year was actually the year that Frank Solich got let go from Nebraska, and Bill Callahan was hired from the Raiders. And when Coach Callahan came in, he had a lot more focus on recruiting and on statistics. And so through that, I kind of transitioned off of rifle and baseball and over to working just with the football team and doing a lot around just gathering information for them and helping them analyze it and break it down. And through that work is how I got exposed to a lot of the systems they were using at the time, which was resulting in them breaking down a ton of games, practice, opponent scout, breaking down as, 50, 60 columns, 70 columns worth of data on each play in some cases, and then trying to burn it to DVDs to share it with players when they wanted to go away from the facility, or coaches wanted to go on the road recruiting, or God forbid, go home at night at some point. Through my work at Nebraska is how I really got to know Jeff Raikes, a big Nebraska fan. We would talk often on the prospects for the Huskers at that point in time. And Jeff always had a passion for how the Raikes School could give back to the university, and beyond that, I'd say, to the athletic program, and somehow give the Huskers a leg up over a lot of our competition at the time. So there was kind of one idea we were kicking around kind of video games and basically importing the playbook to that. There were a handful of solutions doing that at the time. And so we sat down with Jeff and told him, I think this is interesting, but there's other people solving it. Like, here's something that we've seen as a real need, which was built around how you could take that video, which is what the coaches actually wanted the players to watch. So video games are great, but some of the tendencies of a specific position, like a cornerback, were really tough to pick up, or a wide receiver, or an offensive lineman even. So they wanted to see that video and have a great way to share notes on top of it and get that out to their players and really focus their study away from the facility. And so that's what we built for Nebraska. So that would have been, we started that idea probably November, December of 2005, which was our grad school year. Started working on it, presented it for the first time in February of that year to the University of Nebraska. We talked with Coach Callahan and his staff all along the way, but sat down with him, I think, formally for the first time. And Coach Callahan's first comment was, first of all, this is phenomenal. This is the first solution I've seen. I've had a lot of companies come up when I was at the Oakland Raiders in the NFL. Had a bunch of companies come up from Silicon Valley to pitch us. But this is the first time I've actually seen something that would make us better as a team. So we're sitting back there kind of going, a little fist pump underneath the table, like we've actually solved something. This is going to be great. And then he said, well, I'd like it for spring football this year. Well, that was about a month away. And real testament to Brian's ability to build a smoke and mirrors prototype that he was able to convince Coach Callahan and his staff that it was so good that they could deploy it the next month. But what we talked to him about was, all right, let's take a step back. And if you give us access to your players, to your coaches, just to the team in general, and let us really get an understanding of what the University of Nebraska needs to get better, we'll take that year and we'll build that out. And we'll launch it for you next spring. And that's the time that they followed. So that's what we did. We graduated in May. John and I with our masters, Brian with his undergraduate degree, and officially formed the company at that point in time. And then spent really that next year, which led to some lessons learned, but really focused on learning how the University of Nebraska needed to solve some of the challenges for their coaching staff. We learned afterward that you probably should not focus on just one customer. Probably a better idea to get about, 8, 12 if you could, just a few more perspectives at the table, but that was still how we got our launch.
Yeah, and I think the one other thing I'll say, so Jim has been an amazing advisor and coach to us from the earliest days. And so part of what I think Jim's alluding to is we were sitting down at his kitchen table, he and Laura's kitchen table, and he asked us the question, and this was before we had even really gotten going. We knew Nebraska was kind of interested, like, are you guys here to build a product or a company? And it's such good advice. We're just like, I don't know, we're here to build something, like we want to start our own thing. And he's like, is that thing a company or is that thing a product? And David and Brian and I went back and talked, like, what are we in this to do? And it was pretty clear to all three of us, like, we're in this to build a company. We want to build a team. We want to create a culture. Like, we want to do more than building and kind of flipping a product to somebody in the industry that might buy it a year later. So we came back to Jim and said, we want to build a company. Like, we're in this. We're all in. And that was kind of gave Jim the direction of like, all right, great, then I'm going to coach you, mentor you. We're going to get the right support system around you, and like, let's do this. That really set us on the right path.
A little bit of the teaching moment there is this is never an orderly process, and the closer you get to it, the uglier it is. But it is a purposeful process. That is, these guys, we were all mission driven at that time and wanted to really get a lot of energy and a lot of purpose about what was going on. But don't expect that stage of your life, should you decide to enter it, to be orderly and satisfying on a daily basis. It's going to be satisfying on a monthly and maybe a yearly basis, but there's a lot of challenges. And so talk about what are some of the things that happened here at the Raikes School when you were here that led to helping you meet some challenges and some others that maybe you could have done differently. Basically, asking the question, if I'm sitting in the audience thinking about I might want to try to do this, what's some of your advice about what you can get out of your Raikes School and your college education? And what are other things that just have to wait till you learn them the hard way?
I can start and let you chime in, John. I think one of the biggest values we got from it was just the team that we got to work with and ultimately would start a company with, between the two of us and Brian, and a lot of our early hires and a lot of people who are very high-level leaders for us now at Hudl are all individuals that we met or worked with in some capacity at the Raikes School. And the real leg up that gave us, especially for the three of us, was whenever you're entering a relationship like that, like forming a company, Jim has talked to us about this often, but you're going to spend a lot of time with this person, and you're really going to have to learn to get along, and you're going to have to learn to, when you don't agree on something, learn how you resolve that and what the next steps are. And it's been something that's been phenomenal for us. I mean, from the very beginning, we know that not all of us see eye to eye when we're in the room meeting on a topic and making a decision. But the minute we walk out of that room, and that decision's made, all of us are in line on making that happen, and there's no second guessing or questioning the other people if we made the right choice. So that's been incredible for us. So I think that having that 5 years of working together through the school in a more structured way really set us up for success when we would come together and form a company.
Yeah, that's the biggest, like, those Raikes School students that are in the room here right now, like, you guys are sitting around some of the best co-founders out there. And there's people that would just kill to be in company like this. I've talked to so many entrepreneurs that are like, how do I find a co-founder? And it's like, that is the hardest, such a hard part of starting a startup is kind of being solo, having a great idea, but you're missing that other component. But you guys have all the components here in the room, so that was an awesome asset for us. It's a great asset for you all to have, around you. The other thing I'll say is design studio. It just gives you so much confidence when you're shipping real product for real companies that like, oh, this is what it looks like. Like, it's not magic. Like, you just kind of work hard, listen to what a customer wants, like hack your way through it. I think a lot of students are graduating, they haven't gone through that, so there's that kind of unknown of like, well, what does it look like to build software and ship it for a company? To be honest, like design studio in a lot of ways is harder than startup because you've got a customer and a client, you've got the school here, you're trying to learn different techniques, apply different things, you've got all these kind of constraints that you actually don't have when you're starting a company. So I think that gave us some confidence too of like if we can ship software for the state of Nebraska or for Madonna Rehab or Microsoft and we kind of understand what that takes, like we can go try to do this on our own.
Yeah, the final thing I'd say on it is we got connected with just an amazing network of advisors, which have been incredibly valuable to us over the past 10 years and will continue to be incredibly valuable to us in the future. So John mentioned Jim earlier, and we got connected to him through Lori, and that's really helped us decide to build a company and helped us as we put some of that initial structure in place. And Jim has been an amazing executive coach for John, for Brian, and for me over the past 10 years, and is an awesome chairman of our board and does a lot of coaching with other members of our team. So Jim's been great, but we also met Jeff through the program, and Jeff's an amazing member of our board of directors for us, an amazing advisor and mentor, for me and for Brian and for John also. And then a handful of other people that are friends of the program now, Clay Smith, who runs Speedway Properties here in town, Mike Dunlap, who's the chairman of Nelnet, serves on the board of advisors for the Raikes School. All those connections came kind of through relationships that we built from the Raikes School.
I'd like you to, another thing to pin to the side of your brain about this issue. When asked for support and advice, most people, nearly always, especially coming from sincere, highly capable people, someone like Jeff or Tricia or me or Clay or Mike, we're going to say yes. And the reason we say yes the second time is because we feel we're talking to somebody who listens and reacts. And surprising how few people carry that characteristic. But if you're somebody who has been through this time and time again over your career and some earnest, capable person wants some advice, you'll give it. But one of our core values is we listen. That doesn't mean we accept the advice, but it does mean we listen to it and understand it. So that's a characteristic these guys have had, which means the networking capability that's gone on in this company is incredible. These guys are very effective networkers, and that is at the core of it. So, guys, none of this happens without oxygen or money. I know how we got oxygen, but how the hell did we get money early on here?
I can talk about the early days. So when we were starting the company, we each decided, we're going to put skin in the game and do this for real. We each thought $10,000 was the right amount that forced the three of us to go out, talk to our families, or get that money together however we wanted to do it. We didn't ask each other how we did it. It might have been nefarious. I don't know how David did it. So that was kind of the start. And it wasn't right off the bat, but pretty early on, we just said, like, that's going to give us enough money to kind of travel to the meetings we need to travel to, have a super basic, really basic office, no HVAC, just literally an office. Internet was more important than HVAC at the time. So that was the very, very beginning, and then we were able to go win about $70,000 in cash from business plan competitions. We realized like one of our strengths was we had this great demo. It was sports video with Telestration on top. We actually had Nebraska, on board or very soon to come on board as a customer. And we invested the time in a real business plan. None of it's really come true fully as the plan laid out, but we had a plan. Looked pretty good. Applied our MBAs, got our money's worth out of the MBA. So we were able to really rock out these business plan competitions. I would encourage anyone here that if you've got an idea, like you're going to get great advice back from the competition in the least. You might actually win some cash. So about $70,000 in novelty-sized checks. Literally got to carry one through an airport one time. That was pretty fun, actually, like jamming it through the X-ray machine. That got us through the first year, and that allowed us to sign Nebraska as an official paying customer, which was huge in terms of having the valuation as a company that we wanted when we raised our first round of outside capital. we were able to give up a lot less of the company, have a more solid valuation, and show investors kind of this really important proof point. And so that whole strategy really worked out pretty well for us.
Yeah, the original business plan did not work out so well for us, though. So we ended up raising money that first time, would have been June of 2007. And we raised it from a group here locally, so a forum that was a YPO, which is Young Presidents Organization. It was the one that Clay Smith and Mike Dunlap were both in, and they had a group of 10 that each put in $100K each, I think. And then we raised another chunk of money from Jeff and Tricia, and from one of Jeff's former coworkers at Microsoft, a guy named Pete Higgins. And so that was our original group of investors, and that was the money that got us through the original business plan, essentially, which was really focused on the very top end of American football. So it was Nebraska, Stanford's, Washington's of the world, NFL teams like the Jets, Dolphins, Cleveland Browns. They were customer number 2, or NFL customer number 2, I should say. But the fact was, we saw as we were going through that number one, we were selling, although we were trying to keep it subscription software and keep the price low, it was essentially enterprise software and the number of decision makers that we were having to face. And number 2, as we were going through that process, we kept hearing from high schools and smaller colleges throughout the country that, this problem you're solving for the Jets, for the Huskers, and we have that exact same problem. Can we buy this software? Well, it's a little expensive for you. I don't think you have the budget for it. Or no, we don't handle end-to-end. We don't do the capture side of it. So you've got to have another system that you do for the capture, and then we're just, pump it to us, and we take care of the online portion, and we get to do the fun part. So finally, we kind of realized, we have a lot of customers. We're trying to sell the customers that don't want to buy it from us. We have a lot of customers that do want to buy it from us. We just don't quite have the product that we can sell to them. And so that was kind of iteration 2 of Hudl, and we ended up raising additional funds from Jeff and Tricia to pursue that second line, the second business line that ended up being what is now Hudl.com, which is a service we provide, like John was saying earlier, globally across sports to the high school and smaller college space, and ultimately now to the elite space as well. As that's what Nebraska uses. It's what Oregon, they'll be, when they play tomorrow, we'll be putting the video right afterwards on Hudl to watch it. So that was kind of iteration 2 of our business and iteration 2 of our fundraising. So thank you, Jeff and Tricia.
Yeah.
So if I'm somebody out here in the audience and I'm 9 months away or 18 or whatever it is away from finishing up here, how do I get a job at Hudl? What do you look for in the people you bring aboard, and what kind of people last and what kind of people don't? Any comments about that?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So we try to really use our values when we're hiring. So listening is something we look for. Is this person, and not literally do they listen in the interview to what I'm saying, because we really try to, we're the ones that are listening in the interview, but are they hungry to learn? So are you, outside of just what you're having to do in school, are you hungry to go take on your own projects, your own personal projects? Do you have a lot of kind of hobbies and interests where you're just hungry to absorb new information and learn and be challenged? So that would be the number 1 thing I think we look for in anyone we're hiring. Are they kind of adventurous in that way and seeking knowledge constantly? I think when it comes to engineering, we do really put a pretty big emphasis on what are the kind of projects this person's really enthused about, where it doesn't matter whether it was required for a course or not. They're going to be putting in the hours to really do cool, interesting stuff and explore new technology on their own. If we're not seeing that, it's to us usually a pretty clear indicator that this person, they might be a talented engineer, but they're not going to be the kind of person that levels our team up and is pushing us into new territory. And the same goes for most other roles. So kind of take any given role, are they doing the things that are kind of adventurous and out on the fringes, pushing themselves into uncomfortable territory? So that's a big part of it. I think just inquisitive about kind of Hudl in our space. So it's kind of back to that hungry to learn. Is it somebody that's really interested in where we're going? Are they asking good questions about the future of Hudl and what their career looks like being part of Hudl? Is that something they're thinking about and interested in? Or are they just kind of looking for the next job? Those are all things that we generally look for.
I think it's how can they speak intelligently about what they're doing to improve themselves and to help grow their mind beyond just what's required in school. I think that's a big factor for us. I think the other thing for interview process, so as a heads up, hopefully many of you will apply and go through interviews, but we like to get exposure to a wide variety of our team. So through panel interviews and engage people with really wide open Q&A sessions. So questions not only from our team, but from you on what you're looking for. And I think those are really things that help us out as we learn more about new potential hires.
And then we've been getting more and more hands-on in our interviews. So we try to get a feel for both ways. Like, is this going to be a fun person to be in the room with, whiteboarding out a problem? You know, we're trying to do instant replay for high school football, and we can't figure out like how we should build this private network on the side of the field. What kind of router should we use? This is all new territory for us. Is this a person we want sitting in the room, whether they're going to be on the business side or the product side, like hashing through how to bring instant replay to 5,000 high schools that are going to be moving from stadium to stadium. So we try to set up kind of scenarios where we can get a feel for what that's going to be like. And you as a candidate can get a feel for what that would be like working with us, so both sides know like, this is going to be energizing or it's not.
Why have we kept the corporate headquarters in Lincoln, and where's that headed for the long haul?
Yep, so we have, John mentioned all the different offices we have right now. So out of our team of, it's 440 now, about half of those, so right around 220 are here in Lincoln. And we choose to be, we're right down in the Haymarket right now. So we're above the scooter space, the whole second floor on that corner is where we're at. And then we're right above Old Chicago, so we're the second and third floor. And then if you're down there and you look just beyond that, over the train station, is where our new headquarters will be. So it peaks up over the top. And we're incredibly excited about that for a number of reasons. One of them is to get all of our team back together. So as we grew, you know, and the Haymarket grew in popularity, it was tough to keep everybody in one building or on one floor. And so that's what led us to being split across, albeit only, you know, block and a half, but still can be a little daunting in the winter, and we still don't get the amount of collaboration that we'd love to see. So that's what the new headquarters will bring. The reason we chose to stay in Lincoln, Jim, is we just have an incredible base, we think, through the University of Nebraska, both for hiring and for relationships, for testing things. You know, Nebraska Athletic Department has been great to us. Their football team will try anything we want them to try. It's the same across sports. If we want to get a meeting with somebody in track and field, Sean Eichhorst will happily set that up and let us go in there and try anything out that we want to. And two, hiring across roles. So not only getting excellent graduates like all of you will be from the Raikes School around the technical side, but also for our support team and for some of our business roles. We found really great hires here in Lincoln as well. So City of Lincoln is just, university has been great to us, and the City of Lincoln and the support we've gotten from leaders around the community have been phenomenal. So that led us to start here and stay here.
So just another story about meeting daunting challenges when you're in the position that these two guys and Brian is. I remember, it was one October, I don't remember what year it was, but we had come to the realization that there were about 16 or 17,000 high schools playing football in North America. It looked like our product was going to be selling pretty rapidly, and so we had some early indication there may be some success there, but we needed all of those schools, and we didn't have any sales force. And I remember setting that meeting, and it was just obvious. We turned to John and said, we got to have a sales force, and it's got to be happening fast. I doubt if he had a class in building a sales force in his undergraduate career, but by the time April rolled around, we had 8 or 9 full-time salespeople spread across the United States selling product, and that got us well on the way to capturing north of 90% of those 16,000 schools over a period of time. Because this, and I remember that moment with John. John has a way where he gets this look on his face, and he has this sincere, capable look like he always does, but his wheels are going so fast in his brain that there's hardly room left in his skull for it. And he figured this out and did it, and 4 or 5 months later, we had a sales force that was helping us get where we wanted to be. David, on the same sense, we've acquired, how many companies have we acquired over the years? 5. We've acquired 5 companies. David just charged into that. We've made great acquisitions of great companies and technology and talent around the world in ways that have advanced our cause as a company. And the point is that these kind of daunting tasks, you're up to it if you just know what it is to be working hard and be disciplined and accountable, and to also gain the expertise of people that you're surrounded with. And so that's been a very good thing. So I'll let you, any of you guys have one more thing you want to say before we open up the questions to the audience? Anything?
I guess it's kind of back to the point I made earlier. I mean, it's so easy to undervalue the assets you all have here. And if there's any way we can help, obviously, hopefully it's obvious, we would love to help. But I guess maybe just show of hands, how many people here are interested in maybe starting something on their own, having their own company? I'm curious. Wow. So quite a few. That's great. I mean, you guys have all the raw materials that anyone in Silicon Valley would kill to have. I just put it that way. I mean, we've been out there quite a bit, and we're fairly familiar. We've got an investor now that's based out there. And I think it gets glamorized a lot, and it's a pretty amazing place, but it's also a fierce place where a lot of people are sitting alone in coffee shops wishing they had this kind of a group around them to figure out how to build a team. I think it can be a pretty lonely place, too. So you guys, you have an awesome batch of assets. If you think you might want to start something, the best time to start it's when you're living off ramen in a duplex when you graduate. That's what we were doing. We were living in a duplex after we graduated, living off ramen, and the stakes are pretty low. Well, I say that. Thanks for the money, Jeff and Clay. The stakes for us were pretty low. We had great advisors to help us along, but honestly, great advisors will know there might be failure in your future, but if you're a great team, they want to be a part of it too. So the stakes are pretty low. Take a crack at it. I guess that would be my advice. You got the raw materials.
Savings on wardrobe. If you have 2 pair of flip-flops, a pair of shorts, and about 8 T-shirts, Hudl T-shirts, that part of your equation is solved.
Yeah.
And as soon as we have Jeff show up in flip-flops and a Hudl T-shirt, we know we finally arrived at the pinnacle. So I'd like to see if anybody in the audience has questions. We'll start. Please.
Hire people smarter than yourselves.
Yeah.
Seriously though, we've got a great team around us, and we spend a lot of time with that team helping refine what those mission are and what that mission is and what those values are. And what you're seeing is a lot of reflection of the people that we have that we get to work with every day, and not so much of John and me. I'll leave Brian out of this one.
I think we also try to ask the question, if we bounced a decision off this, would this value actually help us make a better decision? Or if we took a candidate that's looking to work at Hudl and we bounce them off these values, does it actually help us say yes or no? And a lot of them just kind of washed away pretty fast. Dare to be bold, it just wasn't helping us make decisions. But we listen does, that actually does. We thrive on the front lines. That's another one of our values. That helps us make decisions. You can look at somebody who's interviewing for the job and say, does this person thrive on the front lines? Do they like to get their hands dirty? Or do they like to sit in the background? And so that's kind of the biggest criteria in my mind is does it actually, when you bounce something against it, does it result in a yes, no, or help you make a decision?
So the green T-shirt, yeah.
I can start on this one. I wish I had a good, simple answer for how we're combating it, but I guess the short answer is we need to get a lot better, Hudl and the whole industry. So it's a really good question. It's important because the perspectives are absolutely critical for us. The tactical perspectives are those are fairly obvious, I guess, to me. We have female sports that we need to understand. So if we have a bunch of male developers, are they really going to understand women's soccer and softball? So that's just kind of tactical for us as a sports company. We need people on our team that understand the wide purview of athletes in sports and what it means to be a female athlete. So that's important for us. Also, just the perspectives for any company of having a blend of genders and races on your team is important. We've made some big leaps globally in terms of bringing on a lot more diversity. Not gender, unfortunately. We still need to grow there. But kind of all other elements of diversity have grown for Hudl dramatically. Bringing on female engineers has been one of the hardest challenges we've had of finding, just tapping into that pool. We've invested in Girls Who Code. So a lot of our team goes out and helps educate here in Lincoln and do courses at the kind of high school and younger levels around Girls Who Code. We're trying to get more and more involved in programs like that. It's something we keep top of mind during the interview process, no doubt, and during our search process, but I guess my short answer is we still got to get a lot better.
So if you have any advice along that, we are taking any advice on that.
Yeah, maybe it could be great to talk maybe after this about, from your guys' perspective, as a senior, it would actually be great to hear, where are those pockets that maybe we don't see, or where is the need that we could be investing in and helping more? We need to understand the problem better.
Start.
So, I mean, I think one of the ways is we really love the team that we built and the company that we're working at and the challenges that we're solving. And we see those challenges far from solved. You know, John mentioned the 2025, like when we're looking out now 9 years, what we see, the impact that as a company, as individuals, and as a team that we can have on sports is still so dramatic and so much ahead of us. We've had opportunities over the years to be acquired, to sell the company. And one of the times, we got a pretty serious offer from a media company that was really interested. And you know, we looked at each other, we kind of knew not really something of interest to us, but we've got to be serious about it. Like, we have responsibility to our state shareholders. You know, we've got to think through this in depth. So we went down to Mike Dunlap's office down at Nelnet. He pulled in one of his co-founders who's their CEO currently. They asked, okay, so talk us through it, you know, talk us through the offer. Like, let's say you did this. Like, what do you see as your long-term play? Like, are you going to work with this company for a while? And we're like, yeah, we'd probably have to for a little bit, have an earn out, a few years, something like that. And then he's like, okay, so, you know, do you think you'll work there after that? We're like, well, I think we'd struggle. You know, we really like having our own thing, like being able to build the team around us that we want. It's like, okay, so, you know, you'd exit. What kind of company would you build? Well, we really like technology. You know, all of us are pretty passionate in that space. And, you know, sports has been really fun too. So we probably look at something in sports technology and they said, well, I feel like you've already got that. I don't know why you're even considering getting out of it. And that just really rang true to us. I mean, we've just been so incredibly lucky with having a great board, having a great group of investors that has the proper timelines and the proper mentality around building a great company, you know, that sees a great vision for it, just like we do. And honestly, every day is so much fun. Like, I just can't imagine doing anything else.
I think you're hitting on something really important, though. That self-awareness, that's something I think I've learned from Jim and Jeff and other advisors, is the most important part is to be self-aware. Being a serial entrepreneur is a great thing. Like, that's just as important, you could argue more important than building big companies, is getting them off the ground. And so for some people, that is what motivates them, and it would not be a good idea to try to build a 450-person company, and that's totally fine. So to me, the big thing is, like, that self-awareness is what's key. Like, what do you really love doing, and kind of understanding that, and then building your career towards that and not fighting it. Just for us, this happens to be what we really love, is growing that team and evolving the culture.
Partnerships just don't last. They have a very high failure rate. Why does your partnership work so far between the three of you?
I think it goes back to some of the things I was saying earlier on. We worked together for a long time, so we knew what each of us brought to the table, what our strengths and our weaknesses were, and we knew how our strengths and weaknesses complemented each other, and how we, you know, between the three of us, we were a great team together. So I think that was a big part of it.
Get plenty of time away from each other to relax and no, I think we're blessed to have. We were able to figure out in school how we clicked and connect, which is another one of those assets you all have here. Like, you know, the people in the room that you work really well with. Most people don't have that at all when they start a company together. Like, they're figuring that out and kind of crossing their fingers over the first few months that it pans out. You guys have already kind of de-risked that part, and that was really great for us.
So John's joke there was, we live across the street from each other in downtown Lincoln. Brian lives directly below him, and we both have lake houses that are right next to each other in Fremont, Nebraska. So we really, really value spending a lot of time away from each other.
Yeah.
Another question. Here we go. Great t-shirt. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so throughout the years, we've had a number of interactions with venture capital firms, and we'd always kick the tires on them, but decided as a executive team and as a board that we didn't necessarily see that the value was going to be properly aligned for bringing a venture capital firm on board, because it wasn't a capital need for us. We changed that mentality last March when we did a bigger raise in advance of an acquisition we did last July. And so we brought on Excel Partners, which is based out of Palo Alto. They have offices, a handful of places around the country, and are one of the elite venture capital firms in the Valley. They invested in Facebook very early on, a lot of very impressive companies in their portfolio. And it's been good. I think we brought them on in the right way. So we made sure that it was a minority stake. We didn't give them a seat on the board. We welcomed their involvement, but at the same time kind of put us in a good way to isolate that involvement, because we didn't know how a venture capital firm's interests were going to align with ours necessarily. And I mentioned we have very patient investors in Jeff and Trisha, in Clay Smith and Mike Dunlap and None that see the long-term vision. We didn't know for a venture capital firm if they would or not. Excel's been good from that standpoint. They understand where we're going and are very patient, see the long-term vision. So we've been very happy to have Excel partners on board, and they've brought a lot of great connections to the table too. So that was kind of our venture capital experience. We weren't sure going into it, so we took a risk with Excel and have been very happy with the results.
We have a good connection at Excel too, so feel free to talk afterwards if we can help connect you up. Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, the short answer is incredibly valuable. I think having that appreciation for what, just at a general, kind of in a general sense, what software can and can't do, kind of where the challenges are, having that level of like empathy with engineers, where you're not an engineer yourself, but you can definitely like sit in the room and talk kind of at the right level with engineers. For me, it's been key. I mean, I run a big chunk of our product team. Brian really runs kind of the engineering side of our product team, but I'm working with developers every day, and I'm also a business administration graduate with computer science minor. So I think it's huge. To me, it's a huge part of the value of the Raikes School, is understanding that.
Yeah, I'd really second that. I think just having a good understanding of what technology can and can't do, and the proper way to work as a team that's building software has just been an incredibly valuable skill. I mean, a lot of our business leaders at Hudl were either got their computer science minor through this program, or even in some cases majored in computer science, but have chosen to focus more on the business side or design side or some other portion of the company. But I think it's been incredibly valuable for us.
Even basic things like how to communicate with engineers. Learning lessons like don't say things like that can't be that hard, or is that really that hard? Kind of just the classic things business people screw up because they just haven't interacted with engineers and have a respect for how hard those problems are to solve. Is huge. I think so. Computer vision, just vision techniques in general, and machine learning are probably the two that are up at the top of our list. We're seeing some really amazing results from applying, kind of combining vision with machine learning to do things like recognizing what's happening on the field, analyzing technique, analyzing team strategy automatically before a coach or an analyst ever touches the video. So I think that's going to be a really, really disruptive area of our market. Wearables is definitely a part of it, but the more vision matures and the more machine learning matures, it's going to be more and more unbelievable what you'll be able to do just straight off of video without having a single sensor involved. So I think that's probably one of the most disruptive things that's happening in sports.
I'm going to take one more question, then I'm going to ask Jeff to kind of give us a close from his perspective. One more question anywhere? Yeah.
Dramatically, I guess would be what I'd say. So another great piece of advice we got from a lot of advisors along the way, and Jeff had done this, Mike had done this, Jim had done this, was starting with a very small company and seeing it expand. You've got to be very intentional about how your culture evolves along that way. And you're kidding yourself if you think that it needs to be, or even if it should be, the same when you're a 3-person team or a 20-person team as it should be when you're a 100 or 200-person team. So I'd say some of the best advances in our culture have happened over the past few years as we've grown to be, grown our presence internationally outside the U.S. and just had such an infusion of, diverse thinking from that, just the way that sports are played, the way that teams operate, the way that individuals work has just really expanded the way that our team thinks and works and operates and interacts with customers now. So I think that's been a big change. I mean, if you were from the outside and you worked at it when we were a team of 20, now you rejoin the team at 444, you could probably point at it and say, okay, here's exactly what's changed over that period of time. For us, it just felt like just a natural evolution along the way. So I'm struggling to pin
some concrete
specific
things. Or like 3 years ago, I remember us saying, we need some people at Hudl that understand soccer. Like you could look around the room and just be like, nobody here understands soccer. And now we have the best people in the world that understand the sport of soccer and rugby. So that's a huge cultural change. Like we talk about global football or soccer, depending on the country we're in, football or soccer every day. So that's huge. And then I'd say the way we think about athletes, parents, and fans, when we started the company, our mission was help coaches win. Literally, that's what was on the wall. And now we talk about help teams and athletes win because the people we think about are much broader. Parents are a huge part of what we do as we move down to grassroots and youth sports. The analyst is a much bigger part of what we do as we move into like European football in Europe. And then the fans are becoming a really big part of what we do as we start like helping athletes get these highlights and videos out to a broader base. So that's another big part that's culturally changed for us. We're talking about those groups of people all the time.
So, thank you guys. So Jeff stands in the middle of certainly Hudl as one of our most treasured advisors. He's obviously, this is his territory here, and also a lot of personal mentoring for the people at Hudl. So Jeff, you want to kind of wrap up for us? Any of your comments?
Sure, glad to. Actually, one question that didn't come up that you might want to address is some of the negatives that occur from investors, like strings that they put on what you can do. Do you want to share any comments on that?
We're actually just we were just talking about that kind of trap that you can get in with the wrong investors.
Yeah, we definitely could have sold to a lot more teams than just Nebraska and New York Jets had Jeff not very specifically told us. In Notre Dame, off limits. Texas,
USC? No.
Miami at the time.
No.
Yeah.
There's no telling what kind of company we'd be now had that not.
Yeah, there's my money came along with a passion for sports, and it had certain prohibitions embedded within it. A couple of thoughts. This is a super valuable session, and I'm glad it's being videotaped because I think it's going to be very important that at some point in your career here as a student, or probably even after you're a student, that you come back and listen to what these leaders have learned from their experiences. This was a really rich session. There were some things that they talked about that I'll just emphasize. One of them, Jim mentioned in a certain form, things aren't orderly. And there's kind of a meta point to that. And David and John mentioned that they shifted from enterprise software to cloud software. That is a breaking point. For many companies, that kind of issue is when they would fail. I don't mean specifically enterprise to cloud. What I mean is they had set down a path of trying to go and sell enterprise software to these organizations and discovered the difficulty. Most companies would have stuck with that and probably ended up imploding. They pivoted. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that's one of the most important things you're going to have to learn to do. You're going to have to pivot. I work with, entrepreneur Luis Salazar in Seattle, and one of the things that Luis likes to do is actually just go out and, put something out into the marketplace and see what sticks, and then he just keeps iterating, and that's part of now modern entrepreneurial culture. So that's one of the most important points that you heard today. There's another point, I can't remember if it was Ann or Rebecca, but it had to do with the importance of the technology side of the education versus the business side of the education. The primary reason that this school was invented was the observation that Bill Gates and I had, that we saw people that had technology depth but didn't have the business aptitude or business leadership skills. Or we saw people who had business aptitude and interest but didn't have the technology depth. And that's a real problem in a technology company, because what John described in terms of understanding what is possible in the technology and figuring out how to put that in a business context is in part the secret sauce. So that was another meta point that you heard today that I think is extremely important. One of the things that's particularly amazing about this company is the fact that these three founders have stuck together and worked together so well for so long. I mean, yeah, I've worked with some co-founders that maybe didn't always work out so well with each other. And, you know, and I've seen that a lot in high tech. But I think that they are a great example of how valuable it can be to figure out how to work together constructively and on an ongoing basis. They do tap into each other's strengths. And that leads me to my last point. I think you have a huge advantage being here in Nebraska. The values of the Midwest, I'm a big believer in Midwest values. The value of the Midwest, a certain sense of humility and a respect for each other and appreciation for relationships. Those are extremely valuable skills in life, but I think they're underpinned by the values here. And although they didn't specifically call it out, I believe that it's the Midwest values of David and John and Brian and how they've been able to put that into the company that's created a big part of what they have today. So, you know, we live in Seattle. I see Silicon Valley a lot because I'm down at Stanford a lot. I would never trade those values for these values. I think the values that you're learning here, either having grown up here or being transplanted here, are extremely important, and I hope you reflect on that. So this is a great team, great set of leaders, and I hope that you do come back at some point in time and re-listen to what you heard today, because it's fantastic advice for not only your career, but your personal life. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.